great to sit down with somebody that I consider a mate, somebody who I've watched their career over the last 30 years evolve, and I always admired your approach to trying to make sheep more functional. I'd like to probably kick off this next piece with a question. In those early years, and we've talked briefly in the past about your view of cattle, how you started in cattle. How did you, those early years, formulate the way that you looked at a sheep from a structural perspective?
It goes back to cattle, and it was actually, I went to a United Beef Breeding Cattle School in 1981, and then we had a visiting American professor, and I don't remember much. It was, I think, 3 or 4 days, but the first day was imprinted in me. And he said, and he brought in like 10 or 15 steers, and he said, you get them all in the biggest pen you've got, and you get as far away from those as possible, and you look at them, and you see issues. Do they put their back foot where their front foot was? And you can walk behind them and all that sort of stuff. And that really imprinted in me the value of looking at livestock from a distance, not getting too close. And I think particularly in Merino, particularly ram sales and stuff, people get so close to sheep they don't actually see the sheep, you know. And that taught me a lot. So when I go to a client's place for the first time, I'll go out to the backyard and just see it. You know, are they hockey? How are the shoulders? How their top line? All that sort of stuff. And then you can work out a plan of the weakness in the flock to try to shift. And that was probably the single most important bit of advice I've ever had in livestock.
It's amazing how those pivotal moments stick out, because as somebody I know does a lot of sheep classing, you use that, you pull that tool out of your toolkit almost every day that you drive onto somebody else's farm. Yeah,
that's right. And but it's also a bit of a people's game, because some people can handle criticism better than others, and it's you know, going in with all guns blazing saying your sheep are rubbish. You've got to be able to bring them with you. You know, that's the other thing that I found in my time, that no two people are the same.
Tomo, I'd really like to lean into that sort of 1986 period in your career, or maybe go back even a little bit further. Go back to that leaving school experience. I personally left high school in 1982, and over here in the east, I learned how to pull sheep out of dams. Was my first skill that I learned on the farm after leaving school. What were some of the imprinting things, or those experience when you first come home that you took notice of?
Well, it was interesting, because I when I finished school, my old man said, you got to go and get another coming behind you, was what he said. So I went to study in Perth. Absolutely hated it. So I did it for about, I don't know, six months, and then he actually went over to America to look at bulls and stuff. And by the time he would have got just off the ground, I was in the car and headed home. And so I ended up applying for a job on a farm. And by the time he got back, I was organised, and I went to a very good sheep farmer at Broomhill. And it was the best 2 years that I had, I reckon.
Yeah, okay.
Just learnt. My father was not a good sheep man. Like he just used to blame the sheep for everything. So we would average about 60 to 65% lambing every year. Lambed in April, no grass, and it was the sheep's fault. Merinos were terrible mothers, blah blah blah. Anyway, so I went to Tim's place at Tim Walker's at Broomhill, and he taught me about the importance of getting the management right. So it was feeding, having spare paddocks, having good water, all that sort of stuff. So I learned to feed, 3 days a week. It was a bag per 100, 3 days a week. That was pretty simple stuff. But at home, it just wasn't happening. So I went home and in 1982, after 2 years there, and implemented a bit more management, but also changed.
So your dad was fine. Your dad was fine with letting you play with that management,
and not particularly. He wasn't. No, not But anyway, I said, bugger, I'm going to do it. So how was I was 20. Yeah. So I got infatuated with sheep, and they bred their own rams, and they were buying sheep from West Stray back in the day. West Stray, which were a Wonga-based heavy skin sheep. So it was all
What
about
year
cutting.
would that have been, Tom?
It's 1980 to 82. I was there. So.
Yep.
And I still remember there was a ram they bought called Clipper, and we took a photo, and he had a flap of skin. You could put your whole hand and cover it with skin. And they took a photo of it. Amazing. How much wool were we going to cut off that? You get both sides of the flap. So, I mean, I thought this is the way to go. So I went down that path pretty heavily once I left there and came home. So we put a lot of skin on our sheep. We started breeding our own rams in 86. And
Yep.
And yeah, it was. I thought I was on a winner, absolutely. But I was absolutely setting myself up for a massive fall.
So tell me about the massive fall and that hitting the wall, so to speak.
Yeah. So I mean, the year that really hit us was 1994. So we were pushing along, cutting a lot of wool, blah blah blah. Our lambing percentages, we couldn't get it above 80, 85 maybe. And it was April. I was spreading fertilizer, spreading super, and we were lambing, and we just had body struck sheep everywhere while they were lambing, and it was just a gut punch. Like, you couldn't do much about it. So it was just I thought something has to change. And then later that year, shearing contract rang me, said, I can't get any shearers to come and shear sheep. They just don't want to do it. And I thought,
what year would this have been?
1994.
1994. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a watershed moment for me. And at that time, I used to subscribe to the Australian Farm Journal. I don't know if you ever remember that, but it was
Yes.
a national, and in that there was Pat Francis was the journalist at the time. He did a heap of articles on SRS back in the day, and Jim Watts, and I was thinking, well, this might be the way to go. So that's what happened. We got them involved, and we got rid of 80% of the sheep.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yep.
So that was not a small decision to take.
That's right. Yep. We absolutely just had to, and so we cropped nearly the whole farm, and then just started again. So 95, I went over to Manu and bought a ram and bought semen and stuff, and changed direction overnight. A bit like a reformed smoker, like the enemy, and I'm still a bit like that, like, you know. But back in 94, 95, there weren't that many tools around, and even, I mean, I look back at photos now and thinking we thought these were plain bodied, but they certainly weren't. But they were plainer than we had ever had before.
Yes.
And so I was pretty pumped to push on, and I really enjoyed the challenge of trying to change.
How was the transition, Tomo, between the flappy skin, the coming back to very few numbers, but still wanting to perhaps be involved with the ram selling world? So
yeah, well, I didn't get into the we registered stud in 92, but we didn't start. Yep. We didn't really start selling any rams until 1998, and that was after this. And it was quite a challenge to actually get into that the field day type setup and ram sales, but we did in 98, and it was a huge buzz because we got a lot of feedback. The sheep were very good, blah blah blah, and we had our first ram sale in 98. Not on property, but
so through this period of time you were working with Jim Watts.
Jim Watts. Yeah, that's right. So I would go to any SRS day that I could. We had Ben Duxon come help us out. Ken Duxon was probably the biggest influence on me. Like, he would take the time and actually explain things to me, and I used to go on the road with him. So we'd go to clients, and he taught me a lot about, closing sheep generally.
Fantastic.
And he was very good at that.
Yep.
And so by 1996, 97, I became an SRS class myself. that was certainly a big moment for me to try to go out to other people's farms and explain what they shouldn't be doing. And it was quite frightening but exhilarating at the same time. And you could turn a flock around. That was a good thing. But back then we didn't have the tools we've got now. So it was a lot slower progress back then.
So Tomo, like, go back to we've knocked some skin off. We're in the 90s. We're in the early 90s perhaps. And did we see reproduction, like another part of the merino sheep, the reproduction piece? How big a change, or just describe that so that people understand how quickly it moved?
It moved pretty quickly from about low to mid 80s, 82 to 85%. So we could get to 100 by just doing that, and we couldn't really shift it much past 100. But that was a big shift back in the day. Like 100% was a big effort, like a seriously big effort. Yeah. And even now, I think the average is 82 or something. Australia-wide, but
it still hasn't moved for a lot.
But coming from 65 then up to mid 80s and then to 100 was pretty good. I wanted more. I really wanted more. But you take the skin off, you lift your lambing percentage, and that's what I learned pretty quickly. But the downside, I guess, of that, is you lose wool cut, and that was the thing. And we probably jumped the gun a bit there, but that was something that you did lose. You did lose some wool cut, but you actually got sheep that are more fertile and more productive.
So from there, we must be getting close to the time when you were thinking about using data to assist selection. Just take us through that piece.
Yeah, so we started bringing our own rams in 1986, and I did the same with the sheep that I did with the cattle. We mothered up everything, and we had full pedigrees right from when I started. So in 1998, we got approached to be involved in the Merino Validation Project, which was the precursor to Merino Select. And then we became a foundation, I don't know, was a member or whatever of Merino Select when it came out in 2000. So we were all in on that, even though I didn't know much about the numbers. And so we fiddled around with it a bit. Didn't use it in sales until 2003 when we had our first on property. We had.
But you were using it to challenge your selection decisions.
We were still trying to understand what it all meant.
Yeah, okay.
There was the problem was there was no one really to educate us of what it all meant. We didn't know. We just didn't know. And it wasn't until it was 2005, I think. When I got a call from Mark Ferguson, and because he'd seen the data, and he said this was late in the year. I think it might have been December, and he wondered if we had any rams for sale. And anyway, he came down, and then he was the one that explained the value of these traits and what to look for. And I was saying, look, we're stuck around this 100 for lambing percentage. And he said, well, growth, muscle, fat, they're the three traits, and you will see a 25% lift. And he was exactly right. We went from
it's a pretty pivotal shift there to have somebody like Ferg come on board. And I know from understanding the business that Murdoch University has also played a part in that with Ferg's time in WA anyway. Just tell us a little bit more about how that collaboration actually worked in the early days. And, you're still a part, Mark's still a friend of yours now. How has that evolved?
Well, he was the one that educated us of the value of data. And that was, I guess, the realization with the SRS thing, that there was a lot of talk about things, but the data didn't back it all up. So that was the thing. And with the cattle game as well, with the breed plan and the Angus breed, they were already 25 years ahead of us. They'd started breed plan in the mid-70s, and it actually does work. And as Ferg said, this does work. And if you do this, it'll be a cumulative effect. So really started on, well, back in the day, it was Y weight, Y fat and Y muscle. So we changed that now to P weight, Y fat, and P muscle. So it was instrumental in what rands we used back in the day, because we didn't worry about fleece weight, because if we worried about fleece weight, we wouldn't use any of them. That was the issue. We had to really try and get these three pillars up to base everything else on, and that's what I think set us up pretty well.
And certainly for me, reflecting on your animals, I think it's what's probably created a merger and type, in that you've got an efficient merino sheep that has lots of lambs, and it's backed off those pillars of early growth, fat and muscle.
But we, as I said, we didn't have many tools to play with back then. You had to use some rams that maybe weren't perfect in other areas, but they had some of those traits. It's so much easier now, and we've got so many more traits. But back then, it was really those three plus staple length. We had to bring staple length in. Well, we had staple length mainly because that was a skin type. That was the plain bodies. If you had a high OASL, they were generally no wrinkle on them, and they were the sheep we wanted to go with. So so that's really started our measurements, and we were determined to keep pushing along that line, despite criticism from within the game about, they don't cut any wool, they don't cut any wool. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. But we were getting 120 to 125 lambing percentage, and we were getting clients starting to get up there. And to me, that was
How soon did that happen, Tom? Are we talking the 2000s, or when were you up at 125?
Oh yeah, probably by 2010 to 2012, somewhere in there. Yeah, it took a while, but it
a big shift.
Yep, big shift. And that was the hard thing was to get from that 100 to 105 up to 120, 125. It was quite a difficult jump doing that. And they said, can't be done. And fuck it can. If you actually have the data, it can be done. And that's
Yes.
what my criticism of this industry is this traditional thinking, and it can be done. Like, we stopped mulesing in 2004, and they said it can't be done. You'll have 5 sheep everywhere, but we will never go back. We'll never go back. And and the same arguments today that it can't be done. Well, we've been doing it for 22 years. It can be done.
Tomo, across the journey, there's lots of instances where you've had those pivot points, and sometimes they've been a part of a strategic planning. But every now and again, we get those things that pop up that you go, God, I didn't expect that. And I'm not sure what the most obvious one of those that you've had in your career, but if you had one that you wanted to talk about, what would that be? Like, what's that one big surprise?
What, in breeding, you're saying, or just in general?
In breeding, like how the animals responded to either breeding values or some change in management?
I would say I've said it for a long time, that it's the importance of genetic fat, I think, is probably the biggest driver that we've had, and the most misunderstood and poorly publicised by sheep genetics. I think genetic fat is the big, in our environment, particularly in that harsh environment, fat is the king, and not be scared of calling fat the king. It's not like we want to have lots of fat on the outside of the animal, but it's to have that fat there to draw down. So when a ewe does have twins, she can raise them. I mean, there's no point, as plenty people say, I'd rather have one good single than 2 runty twins, but we want 2 really good twins. That's what we want, but she's got to have the resources to do it. So I would say finding that fat is such an important part of resilience.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. We see so many, like, we all have up and downs in season, and those animals that can quickly respond to green grass or draw down, it's sort of like there's two things pulling together there to lift productivity on farm. Is there anything else that?
No, I guess that's getting feedback from clients who are transitioning, and they say that those high fat animals hold their condition. And it's so important, to maintain, once the lambs are weaned, get them back in condition on green grass, and then just maintain them. And that was, and getting that message across. And they understand it. It's mind blowing. I do remember when, I think it was 2005, we had a contingent of South Africans come to Australia, and they started in Queensland and drove down the east coast and across. And he said everywhere they went, they said, "Don't go to Moojma because the sheep are rubbish. Don't go, don't go." And when they got there, they said, "We find a pound sheep we like." Finally. And that was a buzz for me, because they said everyone told them not to come, from stud stock agents to, I think, the world president of the merino industry at the time said, "Don't go there." And so we started up a pretty good relationship then with the guys in South Africa, and brought genetics out from here and sent genetics from here over there. But that was
and you've visited there, Ty, like you've
been there. Brought some embryos out when you could do it, and we sent semen across there. They were sort of fighting the same sort of battles as us when they were being accused of not cutting enough wool, but they still didn't sort of adopt sheep breeding values as much as we did. But it was that was a bit of a blast, just to have someone who didn't know anything about us come and say, "Wow, love their sheep." So I was pretty pumped after that as a young fella.
That's awesome, mate. Look, and I think this chat's worked brilliantly. I think it sets that foundation for us being able to then do some deeper dives into that next little chapter from 2005 onwards. Is there anything else that you would like to put into this sort of section?
That period? No, just I think that's roughly. I mean, I can't believe I had the energy back then to do, because you're up against a huge traditional industry that you've done, and that's one thing I must admit that I have to give Jim Watts a lot of credit, because he stood up and challenged the narrative. And I remember asking him once at a workshop up at Muck and Boot, because I'd go to every one of them, and I said, "How do you keep your enthusiasm up?" And he said, "It's worth the fight. It is worth the fight to take him on." And so that was I give him enormous credit for that, to continue to punch above his weight there, just and his ability to communicate with growers as well was very good. I think he did 5,000 producers through the time that I was there.
Wow.
And we felt like we were when I became a mentor classer, which there was 8 of us, top classes, in 99 or 2000, whatever, and we just felt like we were we were fighting a resistance. We're going to win. And you look at what I mean. The Merinos have changed a lot. There's still a lot to do, but they did change a lot.
It's like I think my view on that, from an external position, is that it's really tough to make good breeding choices at times, when you might have a few different things that you're considering that you want to do. But in the stud stock caper, when you're actually going against conventional thoughts or wisdoms, and in a way, you look at the conventional conservative fine wool producer in the East, he sees the concept of non-mulesing and less skin as a threat. And you guys managed to stay strong, stay tough, even when it wasn't popular.
Yeah, that's right. I guess when we sold 10 rams in 1998, we took to the Katanning sale. I remember it, and it was a big sale back then. There was probably 250 rams from different studs, and we were last, right? So, and I didn't know anyone, but anyway, we ended up having a cracking sale. So we topped the averages. So we went from last to first.
Yes.
And that was a moment I thought, wow, we can do it. People came that I never knew, and I've still got some of those clients from '98.
Wow.
They came to look at other people's sheep, saw ours, and bought them. And I thought, I can probably do this, So that was probably a not a light bulb moment, but it was a reward for effort, I guess, up to that point. That we spent a shitload of money which we didn't have on rams and semen and bits and pieces, and we were finally. I felt like being vindicated. We've actually made a difference. So that was, even though it was only 10 rams, it was a start, and I felt pretty pumped.
Well, you would have been pumped yesterday when I was sitting in an office in Northern Victoria talking to a producer that's gone into their second joinings of Murgipin, and the old man's the typical cynic has been leaning on the fence going, I don't know about these Murgipin, and he dropped the bullet the other day. He said, goodness me, look how these rams have got condition and how they're handling the tough seasons. Like, this is amazing. And I wish I'd have known he was going to say it. I would have taped it and played it back to you, but it was just terrific.
It is interesting when you say that, because a lot of the times when I went out classing in the late '90s, the son would be there and the father, right? And the son would be right, but the father would be super critical of what I was doing, like really. And I remember my very first job was up at Beacon, and there was the father, John, and the three sons, and every sheep, why, and that was really hard. And then we went in. It was either Smoko or lunch, and his wife said, "How are you going down there?" And he said, "All the good ones are kicking out, and all the shit he's keeping." And I thought, "Oh, great." Right. Anyway, I didn't hear from him all the next year, and then the following year he rang me and said, "I don't know what you did, but it worked. Can you come back?"
What a classic! Yeah. What a classic!
Yeah, because it was the hardest day class. I mean, first day on the job, and but
there's a bit of resilience in that story, mate.
But that was often the way that the father was more traditional and a lot more focused on the wool and the dark, the dark tips to cut in the wool, and I was taking the dark tips out, but all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, it was very challenging for them, and I could understand that. But it was. Yeah, I had a lot of trouble with the older generation fellas.
It probably stands to reason, like that risk aversion, fear that a lot of farmers have. Like it's hard often to think forward.
Yeah, change is very hard, particularly if you've, and that's it's very hard to get clients away from a certain, if they're buying from a certain stud, because they've got that relationship, and it's very hard to break that off. The younger ones are better at it. There's no question they're better at it, and once the numbers come in, they can use that as the reason for moving, and it's a good reason to move. Yeah.
Do you think that as the younger farmers, the younger sheep farmers that are coming through, that they're grasping the ASBVs and the type of merino that probably you and I think is viable? Are they enjoying that ride, Tomo?
I think they still have this confusion about what traits. And I say you've got to sit down and work out your breeding objective, and then work out where you want to go. So and that's the thing. And then I think you're right that they're more open to it, but they still need help on traits. And I mean, this might be jumping the gun a bit, but I'm concerned about indexes used, because to me it's almost a lazy way. And do they know what's in those indexes? And I think it's not that difficult to have. And don't make it too complicated. I say don't make that. You don't have to use 20 different bloody traits. Just 4 or 5. Just understand those, and put them in. So
I'd love to have a deep dive on those traits, and
Yeah.
and a deep dive on genomic profiling for flocks. I think they're a couple of key pieces where we can simplify. I think we can simplify it and make it so ready to use for even a new manager or somebody that's having their first crack.
The tools available now. The tools are great now. I mean, you can make enormous advancement very quickly, and measure those very quickly to see if you're actually going that right direction. But I wish I was 24 now. Wish I could. No, seriously, I think we've got a really good future, but we can, as Ferg was saying, match phenotype to genotype. So make sure that the sheep are right, make sure that the breeding's right, and away you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Look, thanks for your time, Tomo. I reckon we can wrap this one.
Hopefully they can make enough of that to.
But I think it's just nice to be able to be authentic, talk really about what's happened, where we are now and where we want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Thanks, mate. We'll talk soon.
Good day. Thanks, Ramo. Catch up.